Rights. Boy, everyone in this country's always running around yammering about their f***ing rights. I have a right. You have no right. We have a right. They don't have a right. Folks, I hate to spoil your fun, but there's no such thing as rights, okay? They're imaginary. We made them up, like the boogeyman. The Three Little Pigs, Pinocchio, Mother Goose, shit like that. Rights are an idea. They're just imaginary. They're a cute idea. Cute. But that's all. Cute and fictional. But if you think you do have rights, let me ask you this. Where do they come from? People say, well, they come from God. They're God-given rights. Oh, here we go again. Here we go again.
Okay, so this is the Roman atheist here, and we're going into the video, Why You Have No Rights. And George Carlin, although he's a comedian, is very right here. And this isn't the only video I'm going to play. I also have a video by a channel with about 1,000 subs. I don't remember their name specifically. I'll link in the description, but it's American View, sorry, the American View. But basically they take the other side, and as you guys can probably tell by the way I already spoke, I agree with George Carlin that really no one has any rights, but that doesn't mean you can be problematic to society.
Imagine you were playing football against a very determined opponent, and a new rule was introduced. According to this new rule of play, your team could actually never have possession of the football.
So we're going to start with a metaphor. That should be fun. Don't know exactly how that's going to go, but continue your metaphor.
Every time you received a kickoff, or recovered a fumble, or intercepted a pass, or even when you took over on downs, play would stop immediately and possession of the ball would be returned to the other team.
In this scenario, you couldn't possibly win because you need the ball to score.
Well, I mean, I agree with you in this context, but a sports metaphor really has nothing to do with rights, or the lack thereof of rights, because a game is a simulated event where life is very much not a simulation. And so in football, there's only so many inputs you can have, where life, there's almost an infinite amount of inputs.
In the same way, if we try to argue for our rights to life, or for our liberties, or for the right to be free in our pursuit of happiness, including our right to own and enjoy private property, and including our right to worship, and to speak freely, and to assemble, and to protect and defend ourselves and our family, and we try to make these arguments and defenses without acknowledging that their origin is a divine one, we are trying to score without the ball.
No, you're not. All you're doing is affirming the separation of church and state, which is supposed to have been upheld since the dawn of our nation, but it really hasn't, and hasn't since much of the Cold War with the "In God We Trust" and that kind of stuff. But I'll let them continue.
It's impossible to make a case for your individual rights without first acknowledging, as our founders did in the Declaration of Independence, the existence of a Creator God who is the author of those rights. In my education work, I frequently speak to patriotic groups, and I'm asked by some of the more libertarian bent if it's really necessary to emphasize Jesus Christ so much in talking about our rights and how to redeem them and secure them.
Well, I mean, the long and short of it is it's not necessary. There's no direct reason when talking about the Constitution or any other thing to talk about Jesus in this context. There are times where talking about that is appropriate, just not when it's related to government, because there's a reason there's a First Amendment, including the religious freedom, which includes freedom from religion, so you can't have a state religion. So separation of church and state.
The answer, of course, is yes, it is. This is because if we don't start with Christ as the creator and author of our rights, we have no rational or logical basis for asking others to respect them.
Well, I mean, you could just say the government demands that you respect them. That's one reason, and that's relatively rational. Another thing is they're not rights, and there's no requirement to respect them. B, even if God did create them, there's nothing holding other people to those requirements, because supposedly there's free will. Yeah, I mean, those are big reasons. There's some other problems with that, but we'll let them continue.
This is why those who seek to deprive us of our rights have first made sure to erase the memory of their origin from our cultural conscience. This is what the great lie of separation of church and state has accomplished in America.
Now, this actually makes me really mad. They're basically denying the fundamental institution that our government was based off of, which is separation of church and state, and saying that deprives people of their rights. Well, I mean, like I'm saying, rights are a made-up thing, and they're privileges, and they can and have been taken away, like the Japanese citizens, the slavery. I mean, that's a big one. All of these rights have been taken away or given to each other and changed. They've amended the Bill of Rights. So, again, your rights that you speak of are a little bit hard to point out to a direct origin of a god because they had to change.
Don't let them lie to you. There is no mention of separation of church and state in the Constitution.
In 1878, Reynolds versus the U.S. government, the Supreme Court said the First Amendment has erected a wall between the church and state. So yes, it is in the Constitution, and what you said is objectively false based on the words of the Supreme Court.
But more importantly, there can be no separation of God from government because he created it to secure the unalienable rights he created you with.
So, I mean, first of all, which God? Because, I mean, we could institute Sharia law by that logic fairly easily, and I guarantee you would be up in arms about it, and I could use the same arguments you're using now based on that. And this is a relatively accepted definition of rights. Rights are only up until it infringes on a right of another person. So you have the right to do what you want up until you infringe on someone else's right, which is why abortion is legal. But that's a different can of worms.
Trying to argue for your rights without a supreme right giver is like trying to score without the ball. No Jesus, no rights, game over.
Can I just say that is extremely false? And I mean, I proved that earlier. And I did say I agree that there aren't rights with George Carlin. But again, either way, Jesus has nothing to do with it in this situation or really any other situation with government.
This is Jake McCall
And Dominic McCauley
with the Institute on the Constitution, bringing you the American View.
So now I'm going to say at least a little bit on why this is so dangerous. This is dangerous because based on what they're saying, there isn't a separation of church and state, which goes completely against the First Amendment when it comes to religion and freedom from religion, which some people deny, but anyway. So that's dangerous. So that tears apart that part of the Constitution, as I showed with that Supreme Court Reynolds versus the U.S. government in 1878. You can look that up. It's about polygamy, I think, and how that doesn't necessarily apply, but there's some issue with that too. But long story short, most of what these people these two guys are arguing in this situation actively contradicts their goal to propagate the Constitution in any meaningful way. So, hope you guys understand where I'm coming from on this. Have a nice day. If you guys want to see the entire George Carlin clip, I'll have that linked in the description as well as this other video. Have a nice day. Peace.